This session is about evaluating inductive arguments. It's based page 250 in your textbook. You should get your textbook and follow along. Lots of good reading here. When we evaluate inductive arguments, we're looking for what are called informal fallacies. You can also just call them inductive fallacies. And there are different kinds of fallacies. There's a fairly extensive list given here. And I'm not going to read it to you, but I wanted to clear up a few common misunderstandings. Ad hominem, first of all, literally means against the man. And in that, we are looking at the source of an argument and attacking the source of an argument. It's not just a man. Of course, it could be a woman. It could be an organization. And it's a logical fallacy because while we should consider the credibility of a source, we don't merely dismiss an argument, the claimer, and evidence being presented simply because of who is presenting it. So I wanted to clear that up. Further on down, you have an appeal to force, appeal to the masses. Next to that, I'd like you, in your book, to simply write the word bandwagon, B-A-N-D-W-A-G-O-N, bandwagon. And it is the idea of a fallacy where it's what's popular. It's an appeal to the masses. The idea of bandwagon comes from the notion back in the days before we had social media and everything else, before we even had trains. Politicians would go out in these wagons. They would go and meet their public in various towns. It was before they had cable, so an aspiring politician, someone who wanted to be elected, would come into a town, and there would be a number of wagons in this little train coming in, and in the town square or some similar place, they would assemble, and there would be a band that would play. And people got in the habit to show their approval of a candidate of jumping up on the bandwagon, getting on the bandwagon. The problem is some of the people getting up there were just doing it because other people were doing it. It's not that they were going to vote for this person or even liked him, but other people did it, so they did it. So that's where the idea of bandwagon comes from. These others, there are a number of them. It's a good explanation for most of these. And you just simply go on through and know them. Now, begging the question, I don't even like the sound of that. It's just a weird term. And your book mentions a particular type of this fallacy is called circular reasoning. For our purposes, you can use the terms interchangeably because they function the same way. Basically, the conclusion is just a restatement of the premise, and it's just goes in a big circle. And we'll have some examples later. The rest of these on the page 252, I think, are pretty straightforward. Okay. False authority, false cause. I wanted to point out these various terms, post hoc, false cause, and further down a subtype, mistaking correlation for causation. Just all three of those are really interchangeable for our purposes. But in all these, there is a situation where we're looking at evidence, we're looking at a situation, and we're mistaking correlation for causation in all of these. One isn't causing the other. One happened in parallel to another, going back to what I introduced the first day of class. So check that out. And further on down, that page I think is pretty straightforward. The next page, we have a few items, and I think the examples will help you. The term red herring, though, right here, is a peculiar term. It doesn't mean anything unless you know its background. It is including irrelevant details to distract an opponent. It's a question, and these overlap somewhat. It's a question of logic. But we, in looking at analyzing evidence last time, we question whether some evidence is relevant. So not only is the information maybe not relevant, the evidence, but it is also a logical fallacy to be using illogical evidence for a particular argument. Red herring, think of it this way. It shouldn't be hard for you. I'm a criminal. I've escaped from a jail. I'm running like a wild man because I don't want to be captured and put back in jail, but they send the dogs after me. I feel I am doomed because I'm being chased by dogs. Dogs can smell the scent of Mr. Ray. And so I'm running through the woods, and suddenly I happen upon a red herring. A red herring is a very dead fish that stinketh. So I take the red herring, kind of smear it along behind me. Maybe I jog down the road a little further, jog it, and I chuck it in the woods. And then I keep running. The dogs will encounter an irrelevant scent that's stronger than my scent, and will be thrown completely off. That's where the idea of red herring comes from. Straw man is also a little peculiar. Often in trying to make a point, people present the opposition's viewpoint, but they make it ridiculous. They make it misrepresent it in such a way that's really not what the opposing argument is. And the reason it's called straw man, a real man could come and attack me and defeat me. That's the opposition coming at my viewpoint. But they could come as a person and defeat me. A straw man could never do that. But that's not a real man. I can go and do my kung fu moves, take that guy right out. Not a problem, because the man is merely made of straw. So hopefully that clarifies a few of the more peculiar terms. And we need to go on to look at the fallacies that you were checking out. So we have here these samples. If you number one is simply circular reasoning, and again, some of the terms are interchangeable. You can go back. Number two is arguing from ignorance. Number three is hasty generalization. It could also be a false cause. If before we say zinc cures colds, we're going to want to look at more than mom and me and her best friend. Also, we're not sure necessarily that the zinc has cured even our 3 colds. Not only is it a small sample, a hasty generalization from a small sample, but we can't even really be sure that this zinc had anything to do with it. The problem with colds is there are myriad viruses that cause colds. Not all colds are the same. And that's part of the reason it's very hard for scientists to come up with cold cures, is colds by nature will cure themselves eventually. And some colds are long and some are short as far as their duration. And we really don't know what kind of cold a person has. So whether or not the zinc really has had a benefit or not is very hard to tell. Number 4 is a little extreme and silly, but that's guilt by association. Number 5 is ad hominem. We're attacking Socrates rather than looking at his good thinking. Number 6 is an appeal to force. That's all that is. Number 7 could be seen as an either or. If we don't do this, then that will happen. It's also could be a slippery slope. In a single presentation of claim and premise or evidence, there can be multiple fallacies taking place at once. Number 8 is simply appeal to the masses, or you could call it bandwagon. And number 9 is number 9 is a complex question. There really is more than one question here. We're assuming the answer to the first one. We should be asking, did you skip class? And then once we get an affirmative, yes, I did, then we ask, did you do something productive? The reason the complex comes in here is even though there's one question asked, there really should be 2 here. It's more complex than it looks like. The next item is a false authority. George Clooney is a great actor, but he really doesn't know that much about banking, not more than just a regular person. He's a false authority. Number 11 is post hoc, mistaken correlation for causation. Same thing there. And number 12 is burden of proof. Here, if I'm going to make a claim that chiropractic is going to cure heart disease, I don't put the burden of proving that that's not true on my audience. I'm supposed to be proving it. The burden of proof is on me making the claim, not on the audience hearing the claim. Now here in this particular passage, it goes back to page 224, so we need to turn back, and I'm hoping I can get there quickly, but the Screencast-O-Matic is messing me up a little bit. I hope I can get there quick enough not to have it do another. I can't get down to my sheet, it doesn't look like. Hold on just a second. Oh, I can. 224. So you turn to 224 as well. In this, you had to look at a particular article, and it's the next page. You've already looked at this once on page 224. It was about gun control, and it was an example of really biased language. And I'm going to go through all of this at once. In this particular exercise, there were myriad problems. Gun control advocates simply say they want society to be safer, but that's a lie. That is strong language. To accuse people of lying right out is very loaded, opinionated language. What they really want is to take firearms away from decent, honest citizens. Those are more of those cliches, loaded language. Guns in the hands of criminals. They won't stop until the entire world is at the mercy of armed bad guys. That is an overstatement, and that is a slippery slope argument as well. You could look at it that way. The tool they are trying to use to accomplish their goal is fear. They're always telling scary stories about how people are being killed with guns and how a gun in the home actually makes you less safe because an angry spouse or a careless child might find it. But make no mistake, if you gave up your guns, these control fanatics would want you to give up axes, hedge trimmers, and kitchen knives next. That is definitely a straw man argument. The gun control people are not advocating taking away these other items from you. It would be really brutal to try and use a hedge trimmer to kill somebody. Up here at the top, we have a circular reasoning. Gun control advocates have mastered the art of twisting words around to make them fit their agenda. That's clear because they're great at twisting words and manipulating language. It's saying the same thing over and over. And so it's circular reasoning. It's clear they use what they use to get what they want. They're always upset about something, and they twist their opponent's words into gibberish. And they're totally unreasonable. These are overstatements. Using the harsh words like unreasonable, etc., is over the line. The last one, trying to reason with a gun control advocate, is like trying to negotiate with a rabid dog. That's a false analogy, a false comparison. It also, you could argue it could be an example of ad hominem, just attacking the proponent of the view rather than looking at the real evidence. And here, if you look, gun control advocates have it out for honest gun owners. They made it so that going hunting or taking your firearm to an indoor range for an afternoon relaxing target shooting is dangerous. They'll call you a gun nut and tarnish your reputation so that people start giving you dirty looks. Then they start spouting off stupid statistics about how the murder rate is lower in countries with stricter gun regulations or some nonsense. And if you try to talk to them about how disarming this country would simply take guns away from good people and leave them in the hands of bad people, that last part is definitely a slippery slope. And up here, he's actually citing information that's true. When you look at statistics in other places, it gets a little bit more complex than that. And there's more slippery slope kinds of overstatements here. And if we do that, then it's going to, in the last paragraph, wind up with lawlessness in society. And so there's quite a bit going on here that is wrong logically, that language-wise is very biased. We'll be doing more with these issues as we go forward, and hopefully that was somewhat illuminated. Again, if you need something, let me know. Email me. Follow the procedures. Remember, if you're confused, you want to ask me something, just send me an email. Make it plain what you want to know. And also, just to remind you, put your phone number on there. I might just give you a call back. I know going back and forth with emails can be awkward, but I can give you a call if we need to. You just need to let me know what you want, and give me a phone number and we can chat a little bit. But I'm thinking most of you don't need that, and I plan to do on my end. Let's all go nowhere really. Just stay where you are, isolate, social distance, be safe, and I'll catch you next time around. God bless you. Bye.